Mm, 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 mm. You want me? Mm, mm, mm. Then come on and kick my door down. Da, na, na. Mm, 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 mm. A gun and a pack of sandwiches. Na na na. Mm 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 mm. Mm 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 mm. Anyway, welcome to another special edition supplemental episode of the apocalypse. And since you have unwisely chosen the apocalypse, you are in urgent need of a guide. Unfortunately for me, I am that guide. Your humble guide, Nicholas. Yes, this will be a short episode. And I just want to frame it this way, because I'm only going to really talk about a couple subjects on this one, and I may come back on later. I don't know. Who knows? If I have the energy. I'm already tired now. Anyway, a lot of people are framing the Supreme Court decision today, or one of them anyway, as a victory for justice, as a victory for due process, as if everything's okay now. In the Twitter sphere, I'm seeing every once in a while, I actually only saw one person trying to make this argument on Twitter, that the White House is playing this as if they won some huge victory via the Supreme Court with both of the rulings. But actually, due process was restored and they lost. So they're just faking the funk. No, they're not faking the funk. The White House did get a huge victory, in my opinion, because this is basically what happened. The one case, they said, the guy that they mistakenly sent to the death camp in El Salvador, well, we're just going to let him stay there for now because, he's got all kind of time in the El Salvadoran death camp. There's no hurry to get him back. So let's just pause that whole thing, even though another judge said, get his ass back here pronto. You cunts. The Supreme Court basically said, you know what? What's the rush on this? Let's just leave him in the death camp till we get this a little more sorted out. In other words, they're not saying we're going to leave him there till he dies, because he's probably dead already. So they can sleep at night themselves, justified in their own evil minds. That they're leaving him there to rot and siding with evil utterly, totally, and completely. The judges that voted in favor of this, leaving the man there. So my first point is, those hundreds of men that went to El Salvador already, some in defiance of a prior judge's order that put a stay on it, where's their fucking due process? How do these rulings restore their freedom or due process? They don't. They're still in a death camp. And as far as the Supreme Court's concerned, fuck it, there's no rush. Let's take a real serious look at this. He can stay down there. We're going to pause that other judge's order because we really need to do that evil and leave the man there to die if he's not dead already. I'm starting to think he's dead. And that's why they're really fighting tooth and nail. And how long would you last, son, in an El Salvadoran death camp with 2 feet of space? How long would you last with the thugs? I'm guessing about 5 fucking seconds. So how long do you think this man lasted? I'm really starting to think he's dead. That's what you got your name on. I hope you're proud of yourself. And again, you know who I'm talking to. So the hundreds of people that already went, some of them I'm sure are probably deceased at this point. They didn't get no due process via these rulings. In fact, even though everyone knows it was a mistake to send the one gentleman, the Trump administration's lawyer even admitted it in court, they said, nah, leave him there. The other ruling where they gave Donnie the right to start deporting Venezuelans again whenever he feels like. So they ruled in favor of him again, in favor of abject evil again. And they put this little caveat. Oh, yeah, you got to give them a hearing and reasonable time to, make a complaint, find counsel, etc. Why'd they put that in there? So they could go to sleep at night and justify that evil they're doing and make it look like to the rest of us that they did somewhat of a good thing. They did nothing. Why? Because they gave jurisdiction to fucking Texas. Texas. You know, the guy, the state that has the governor that's literally a coyote now, that literally transports illegal immigrants further into the country to make some political statement. What do I call that? Human trafficking. That's what I call that. A lot of them had no idea what was going on. They were promised jobs and this and that by the governor. Again, I thought you people were against bringing these people in the country, yet you clap like seals as the governor became a coyote. And your money paid for it to bust them further in, son. Do you realize what a moron you are? Can you even fathom it? You went from hating the Mexican immigrant or immigrant that comes from south of our border to cheering on a governor becoming a coyote, bussing them further into the country as you paid for it. So when we have that type of situation and crooked ass Ken Paxton, who should have been in prison a long fucking time ago, you think that the little 2 sentences of vagary, you got to give them a reasonable amount of time and you got to give them a hearing. Well, guess who decides what a reasonable fucking amount of time is and what kind of hearing they're all going to get, if any? Son. Texas does. You know, Governor Coyote and crooked ass Ken Paxton. So does anyone really believe these people are going to get any due process? And Paxton or Abbott could just say, well, we'll give you a day to find counsel and lodge your complaint. Oh, you didn't get it done? Get on the bus. Sorry. We're going to trust the state of Texas, the crooked ass government of Texas, to give these people due process, because that's all the judges did. I think it was only men that made this decision on the Supreme Court. Because the real decision, son, was that Texas has jurisdiction. Anything else the Supreme Court said is a fucking joke. Utter waste of time, worthless vagaries. What does reasonable amount of time mean? Who gets to determine that? Well, Ken Paxton does, and Greg Abbott, the coyote. So no, there was no victory for due process. There's no due process for the hundreds that are already gone. As far as I'm concerned, the main ruling was, well, Texas can do whatever they want. Oh yeah, but you got to give them a hearing in reasonable time. That can be interpreted many ways. Your hearing could go like this. Hi, Mr. Vargas, I'm Judge Calabrese. Make your case. Mr. Vargas talks for 5 minutes. I gavel it, denied, 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 over and over again. 5 minutes. I could set it up like that. Greg Abbott could set it up like that. Ken Paxton could set it up like that. They took it out of the federal government's hands. They gave it to Texas. They gave them the vaguest and weakest of guidelines. You need to give them reasonable time in a hearing. That could mean fucking anything. I just showed you what the hearing could be for every single one of these people. Is that due process? Absolutely fucking not. Look, some of the initial hundreds that they flew there were already after a judge ordered them not to do it. So there was no victory for due process. I'm sorry. I wish there was, or I wouldn't be saying this right now. It wouldn't disgust me so much. It wouldn't astound me how evil men can be. So let's look at some of these pieces. It's only about 4 things I grabbed. Again, this is just a supplemental episode. I don't know anything, but why wouldn't the Supreme Court say, yes, you got to return the innocent man you arrested, chained, and shipped off to a prison in El Salvador? Seems like a simple decision, right? Seems like a simple idea. Oh, well, one of your lawyers admitted in court that the guy shouldn't have been sent there? Yeah, you got to go get him back. Real simple. Shouldn't even require much thought. And again, we got the greatest military in the world. We got the most expensive planes. We got thousands of them. They can fly faster than sound. Did you know that? And they managed to fly these people down there. So why can't we fly one back? Any argument in favor of why we can't fly one back, I will not even entertain. Because it will only be disingenuous. No one can with a straight face say that the United States does not have the ability to go get this man and bring him back. We flew him there. So why are they so adamant about not bringing him back? Either they want to make a point and they just don't care, or he's fucking dead. Or the deal with El Salvador is, oh, you keep these people for life as slaves. Do whatever you want with them. Here's $6 million, Mr. Bukele. So yeah, you know, it should have been a pretty easy fucking decision, huh? I think so. Not in the new Reich, with bought and paid for Supreme Court justices. Here's an excerpt from an article. And the article is in regard to Supreme Court requires non-citizens to challenge detention and removal in Texas. Yeah, that's the decision, son. Not the, oh, you get a hearing in reasonable time. You better give them that. Who's going to enforce that, son? The authorities in Texas? And then when the authorities in Texas don't comply, is old-ass Justice Roberts going to walk his geriatric ass down there and start locking people up? Absolutely fucking not. Again, those 2 little sentences about they get a hearing and they get reasonable time, that's just cover for the real decision. Oh yeah, we're just going to ship it down to Texas. We don't want, you know, so we can sleep at night. Let Texas just do whatever they want to do. So let's read this little piece. The Supreme Court on Monday lifted a pair of orders by a federal judge in Washington, D.C. that had barred the government from removing non-citizens who are designated as members of a Venezuelan gang under a March 15 executive order issued by Donald Trump. And again, remember, these people were promised in the beginning worst of the worst. Later on, we find out 75% don't even have a criminal history in America. So we were lied to immediately, and I said back then, I said, well, they could label anyone the worst of the worst. They could label you the worst of the worst. Because that's all it took for everyone to nod and say, like, okay, I can go on with my life and be cool with that. They said the worst of the worst, right? So that's an argument. That's a talking point I can use on Fox News against legitimate arguments that, you know, people that have studied history and understand what a Reich or an authoritarian regime would do. And what they would do is label a group worst of the worst. So the rubes would all be like, yeah, that makes sense. Donald and Bondi and all the criminals in the Reich said they're the worst of the worst. So It's okay to send him to a death camp in El Salvador under a dictator. By a vote of 5-4, the justices declined to address the challengers' contention that they are not covered by the 18th century law on which Trump relied on in issuing the order. Again, they didn't listen to none of the case. They just said, we're shipping it down to Texas. They have jurisdiction. We don't. We're washing our hands of it. Oh, yeah, and you got to give them a hearing and a reasonable time, which can be interpreted in a million different ways and applied. However, Ken Paxton and Greg Abbott won. And we all know exactly how that's going to go down there. You think Abbott and Paxton are going to go against Donnie? Do you think that's going to happen? Absolutely fucking not. Never. They're worse than Donnie is sometimes. So the court didn't even address the Alien Enemies Act or whatever the fuck the Reich is using as a justification to just grab people off the street. Instead, the challengers' lawsuit must be brought in Texas, where they are being held, rather than in Washington, D.C., the court explained. In other words, we wash our hands of it. We don't have jurisdiction. We're only the Supreme Court. But we did have jurisdiction to tell, during that other case, that innocent guy can rot in the prison down in El Salvador, because we know he's probably dead anyway, and we don't want Donnie to have that kind of scandal over his head, right? What's sad is a lot of you wouldn't see it as a scandal, which is why, you're probably going to a certain place. The unsigned 4-page opinion emphasized that although courts have a limited role in reviewing claims under that law, the plaintiffs and others detained under the law are entitled to notice on opportunity to challenge their removal. Yeah, and I'm sure Texas is going to just be all kind of helpful to these people to make sure they get due process, right? No. It's a fucking joke. So what's basically the ruling again? We wash our hands of it. We're not going to comment on whether the law Donnie's illegally using when we're not at war to round people up. We're not going to put our names on that. We're going to put Texas's name on it. Oh, yeah, and give them a tiny bit of due process. And, you could interpret these vagaries any fucking way you want. Here is a quote from Sotomayor, one of the judges on the Supreme Court. Individuals who are unable to secure counsel or who cannot timely appeal an adverse judgment rendered by a habeas court face the prospect of removal directly into the perilous conditions of El Salvador CICA, where detainees suffer egregious human rights abuses. Sotomayor wrote in an opinion joined by her colleagues, anyone the government mistakenly deports in its piecemeal and rushed implementation of the challenge proclamation will face same grave risks. Indeed. In other words, if you can't afford a lawyer, if you don't know what to do, if you don't speak the language, who's going to fucking help you? Nobody, and that's the point. That's what Sotomayor is saying here. What if you're a refugee with no money? You have no idea how to navigate this system. And again, once they grab you, whoop your ass, throw you on a bus, transfer you 9 times within a week to different facilities, because cruelty is the point, and each facility gets to charge the federal government. That's part of it's a business as well. Then they get you down in El Salvador. How many phone calls do you think you're getting in El Salvador? How many of your family members or lawyers or whatever do you think you're going to get to contact? No, once you're in El Salvador, you're fucked. And everyone knows it. That's why Donnie flew them all down there so fast. Donnie needs numbers. He figured he'd use these people to get himself some numbers. And why not ship him to a death camp? They tried to open up Gitmo as a death camp, remember? 40,000 prisoners Donnie was going to put there. Then he figured, I'll just ship them down to El Salvador and pay them the $6 million. And, that can kind of wash my hands of it, too. Even when we send innocent people down there, we'll just leave them. We'll go to the Supreme Court and ask them if we can leave them against other judges' orders. And the Supreme Court's all too happy to oblige. Supreme Court justices, I know none of you will hear this because you're too high and mighty to. You've got other priorities, I know. He who is for captivity, into captivity he goes. So for all these reasons, in my opinion, I don't think this was any victory for due process. It feels more like a rubber stamp for the White House to me. For Miss Bondi and Donald Trump. There's no victory for due process here at all. Absolutely none. It's a shame. It would have been nice if there was a victory for due process. It would have been nice if the Supreme Court said, yeah, you can't use that Alien Enemies Act as some type of cover to just grab people off the street because you need numbers for the rubes. Because Biden deported more people than Donnie has. Only difference is Biden didn't deport him to death camps in El Salvador and pay the death camps $6 million. That's the difference between the righteous man and the evil man. The difference between men like Joe Biden and you that cheer on captivity, non-righteous captivity. Many of them aren't even criminals because, again, people, all you rubes out there, all you maggots that want to, they came in the country illegally. That's, they deserve to be down there. No, even if you're not a citizen, you get due process. That's how it's supposed to work. And we're a country that takes people in sometimes. Sometimes there's crises in different parts of the world. And there's refugees. Sometimes we take some of them in. Joe Biden took some of them in. Donnie used that as an excuse to overturn that and ship them down to a death camp. Again, Biden wasn't shipping people to countries they weren't from, paying some death camp $6 million. Again, that's the difference between being righteous and being evil. And it has nothing to do with what letter is next to the person's fucking name. It has to do with right and wrong. But you know this already. A lot of you play stupid, but you're not that stupid. I know that. And a lot of you making the disingenuous arguments, what does it really come down to? Let's be honest here. Let's be honest. What it comes down to is you're evil. And I don't care how you present yourself to the rest of the world or what they think of you. I care what you think inside. That you think all this is cool. That you're in favor of it. And any collegiate argument any of you would like to make, I know it's just a cover for the evil that is in you. That's all it is. It's a filibuster to cover, to justify the evil that is in you. That's why this appeals to you. That's why you can still go about your day with your name on it and not feel disgusted with yourself. So, people like Ben Shapiro is a great example. He'll make a really articulate, thesis-length argument at chipmunk fucking speed. Does any of it matter? Absolutely not. Because all it is a filibuster with a lot of big words to justify or cover the fact that he's evil. That's it. When you reduce it all down. There's no need for 4-hour debates with people like Ben Shapiro. That's a waste of everyone's fucking time. Because all you're going to get is disingenuous bullshit to mask the sociopathy. That's all you're going to fucking get in the 3 hours of your life that you wasted. Anyway, I wrote this earlier. I wanted to read it because it kind of occurred to me, because I'm seeing Leon do like little podcasts. That's Leon Scum. He almost looks like he wants to cry. You know why he wants to cry? Because the tariffs are fucking killing him. His business is China, okay? With his cars. The tariffs are fucking him. Why am I telling you this? What is the point? The point is, one's the beast, one's the false prophet. They're supposed to be in cahoots with each other. But the beast, the one that's really in charge, or that's going to show everyone that he's in charge, just like Adolf did. Everyone thought they had a leash on him. Oligarchs, fellow people in government, people that thought they were very tough and powerful, thought they had a leash on Adolf. Adolf proved that no one had a leash on him. Despite so many thinking they did. I've been saying for years now, and especially since Donnie won the second time, that Leon thinks he has Donnie on a leash, that Vlad thinks he has Donnie on a leash, and that other oligarchs, other people in government think they got this beast on a leash. This ain't Hitler. Hitler was a beast. Donnie is the beast. Leon's learning the hard way that you don't have this beast on a leash. That's why Leon's out there talking against the tariffs. That's why Leon's brother is out there talking against the tariffs. Because the tariffs are killing them. Their portfolios, their stocks. Tesla's finally down to 221. Every time it gets near 220, some shady thing happens and it bounces up 40 points. So I assume 220 is the margin call. It's actually at 221. It's rarely ever there. So I assume Kimball, Leon, they hate the tariffs because it's killing their portfolios and it's killing their main stock, which is Tesla. Even though Kimball sold a bunch, I believe, millions worth in past months. So Leon, again, he's learning the hard way. Yeah, we're in cahoots with this whole Reich thing, and yeah, we're buddies now, or you think we are. But I'm the beast, son. And I'm on the grift here. And even you ain't going to stand in my way with this grift. I want tribute. I want, he's extorting the world. That's what Donnie's doing. And let me tell you, we need the world. The world don't necessarily need us. In other words, again, we're the over-bloated, ridiculously large empire with a McDonald's on every corner. We're the ones that need to import a large amount of things every day. The other countries aren't. And China, during Donnie's first term with the little tariff war, trade war, they didn't back down a fucking inch in 4 years. They just rolled with it. Why? Because they got the factories, we don't. They're not as over-bloated as we are. So they don't need us. We need them. Canada doesn't need us. We need them. Canada is not over-bloated and overgrown and overbuilt. Do you get the picture? But Donnie's running an extortion racket. He wants businesses and countries to come to him, beg him. I have the clips I'll talk about in the next video I do, of him literally saying, they're coming to me, oh my God, they're kissing my ass. They're begging me to take the tariffs off. He said this out loud at an event today. He's admitting his extortion, his grift, right to your fucking face. And he keeps putting this idea forth. America is making so much money. Are you seeing any of it, son? I mean $1 of it. No, you're seeing your portfolio disappear. As Donnie's talking about how much money he's making for America via his extortion racket called tariffs, that we all have to pay the price for, not him. He's just collecting the extortion money and selling the $5 million Donnie gold cards. He literally casually mentions the grift to you out loud, and that doesn't outrage you? So Donnie's not letting anyone stand in the way of his extortion. Even Netanyahu the other day, remember, he was sitting right next to Netanyahu when they asked him, are you going to remove the tariffs on Israel? Nah, I'm going to leave them. Again, Donnie's running a grift here. Even though he needs Netanyahu more than anyone, the grift is still more important. The extortion racket is more important. What he can extort from Israel in exchange for the tariffs going away. This the beast, son. I'm making my case for it. Even people that are vital to him and his agenda going forward. The grift is still more important. The extortion is still more important. Leon, he gave an office in the fucking White House that Leon paid $230 million for. They're in cahoots. Leon was living at Mar-a-Lago. I guess he's not anymore. Is Donnie removing these Chinese tariffs to help Leon? Absolutely not. He added another 50% to him today. Again, everyone thought they had this beat, even the false prophet. He even fucks him over. Even Netanyahu, who he needs more than anyone, fucks him over while he's sitting there. This is the beast. The only thing that matters is the grift and being worshipped. That's it. So I just wrote this little thing. Leon thought he had Donnie on a leash. The leash is fraying and it's about to snap. The tariffs will hurt Leon's businesses terribly. No one has this beast on a leash. He will turn on everyone. You've seen him turn on everyone, and I mean fucking everyone. Netanyahu's sitting next to Donnie while Donnie said the tariffs on Israel will stay in place is another example. This is the beast, and no one can keep him on a leash. Again, you're watching him screw over his closest people. You're watching him as he grifts, as he extorts. Everything is about a protection racket, extortion, blah, blah, blah. Do you think Donnie was mob? Do you think? Protection racket. I'm pulling my troops out of Europe, off the coast of Canada. You need to pay us. And again, those troops are there for the United States security, not Europe, not Canada's security. They were never there for that. So that's his protection racket he's been running on every country. We'll take control of the Panama Canal, and then we'll say who can go through and you pay me. We'll take control of the Suez, and we'll say who can go through. We'll extort Europe. We saw that in the text messages on the Signal app chat. the literal plan to extort Egypt and Europe, and how do we enforce that? Well, they enforce that with the military, don't they? That's how they're going to enforce everything, son. I told you they would use the military on Canada, Greenland. They've already used it on Somalia and Yemen, so we can't say Donnie hasn't used it yet. So extortion involving the Suez and the waterway that leads up to the Suez, extorting Egypt and Europe, is literally part of the plan. They admitted it in the chat. Extortion, protection racket over the Panama Canal. Protection racket regarding Canada, regarding Greenland, regarding Europe. Hey, I'm providing security, pay me. Like the local mobster in New York City, going from small business, mom and pop business, to small business, saying, yeah, you got some good business going here. It's a dangerous community here. Will protect you for $1,000 a day. Is that cool? You can still stay in business, right? You don't mind. Because, it's dangerous around here. We wouldn't want to see your business go away, That's what Donnie's doing on a grand scale. That's all it is. A protection racket when he invokes the military removing them or putting them somewhere. Extortion when he puts ridiculously high tariffs on every country and he can think of, every landmass, including landmasses that only have penguins. Every day we see him do this and talk about these things. Annexation talk like Adolf Hitler, like Vlad Putin. Owning Gaza. Said that yesterday. We'll own it. We'll have a freedom zone. Israelis say they're going to have a security zone in Gaza. We all know what those zones mean. We're going to get rid of the Gazans. The commercial with the gold Donnie statues. Does any of this seem remotely normal? No, you know what it reminds me of? World War II era. A lot of things were changing in the world. Because we had a madman called Adolf Hitler stirring up trouble everywhere. What do you think Donnie's doing? None of this is normal. Absolutely none of it. And I said way back, years ago, all the people that think they can keep this beast on a leash. Nope. He turns on literally everybody. So where is this all going? What's he going to do? Well, he's going to turn on everybody. He's already turned on America. He's an abject traitor. Probably turn on Vlad at some point. He'll turn on the Israelis at some point. He turns on Leon whenever he feels like it. He turns on Netanyahu partially by leaving tariffs against his country. They're supposed to be best of friends. I don't get it. Again, Donnie's pure evil. He's always on the grift. With every breath, he's thinking of the grift. And it's obvious. Damn near every statement he makes is in service of the grift in some way. And now, as he's literally tanking our fucking economy intentionally, so we can switch over to crypto like they did in El Salvador. You know where the death camp is? While he's tanking everything and he's making himself richer than he ever thought possible. He asks all of us to just, hold on, don't worry about it, I got it. Again, you put the government in the hands of a guy who bankrupted 3 casinos. You should have your head examined. You ever heard the term, the house always wins? Donnie's so shitty at business that the house didn't always win in his casinos. They just went bankrupt. But they were probably about money laundering anyway. But what's most disgusting is we're sitting here debating or speaking out loud that there's death camps in another country. And we don't know if the people we sent there are alive or dead. Some of them even sent there by mistake, admittedly. And we get some bitch ass ruling from the Supreme Court that basically says, just give it to Texas. We don't have jurisdiction. We don't want to talk about the Alien Enemies Act and all that shit. Let Texas handle it. Oh, yeah, and give them a hearing and a chance to make a complaint and get some counsel. But, Texas can decide all that. Yeah, no victory for due process. No victory on any front. In fact, again, it just feels like, just like I read you the article regarding El Salvador, how they talked about how Bukele basically has a rubber stamp legislature, which, in other words, whatever the dictator wants is going to get passed. That's what's going to happen in Texas. Anything Donnie wants, anything Paxton wants, anything Abbott wants, that's what's going to happen to these people. There will be no due process. It's a joke for anyone to think in the Twitter sphere that this is some victory for due process and for the citizens here and for these migrants. And it's not a victory for the White House. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm not buying that argument. Although it's very optimistic and beautiful. That's not what I see here. I see the Supreme Court being like Pontius Pilate and be like, I wash my hands of this. We didn't do nothing. Yeah, just start deporting Venezuelans again. And we're just going to hand it over to Texas. And, give them a hearing and maybe let them make a complaint or something before we ship them to the death camp. I'm sure Texas, the government of Texas run by Abbott and Paxton, will be totally responsible with due process and give every one of those migrants a chance. And if you believe that, I've got, again, some great beachfront property in Kansas to sell you for the low price of $1 million an acre, minimum 15 acres. It's called the Candace Owens deal. Got to buy a minimum of 15. So I don't know what else to say except there were no victories today except for evil. That's all I saw. And it's a shame that we have 5 men in the highest position you can think of, the Supreme Court, who can overturn something a president does, that are so evil that they said today, an innocent man doesn't have to be brought back, let him rot there for a bit longer. And you can start deporting people again, and we're just going to kick everything over to Texas. Good luck with due process in Texas, guys. We wrote a couple vague sentences, though, so everyone should be happy now, right? No, I know exactly what's going to happen. When the governor himself is a coyote. I know exactly what's going to happen in Texas. These people won't get jack shit for due process, and a reasonable amount of time will be decided by Abbott and Paxton. And a reasonable amount of time, again, it could be 1 day, an hour, a month, a week. What do you think the generous, kind hearts of Ken Paxton and Greg Abbott will offer as a time frame for the migrants? I'm sure they'll give them all the time they need, right? Because again, the Supreme Court wrote that they have to have a hearing and they have to be given a little time, reasonable amount of time. So that clears it all up, and I guess due process is restored. Nope, not at all. America, again, the second Donnie won the election, America was over. It was gone. I'm sorry. Rulings like this today only prove America is gone. And no, there was no victory for the people and spin by the White House that it was victory for them. And, they're wrong. Donnie's wrong. Nope. In fact, let me read you, Donnie. I forgot to read that. Let's read what Donnie said. I think I have it here. Or maybe I don't. I thought I sent it. I guess I didn't. I'm sorry. What Donnie basically said, that it was a huge victory for the right to secure our borders and blah, blah, fucking blah. And for Donnie, yeah, it was a huge victory. For the White House, it was indeed a huge victory. So I can't run with the folks, and I got nothing against you on Twitter that are trying to make this argument that the White House is trying to spin this and we really got a victory for due process today. We absolutely not. We got no due process. We got nothing. In fact, we got 2 rubber stamps that Donnie can just continue what he was doing, it going against other judges' orders. In other words, these cases weren't just brought to the Supreme Court out of nowhere. No, they were brought as emergencies because Donnie was pissed that other judges stood in the way of the Reich and doing that evil. So the Supreme Court, out of the millions of cases they could have heard, decided we're going to emergency these 2 cases where we leave an innocent man to fucking rot in a death camp after lawyers admitted he shouldn't be there. And we rubber stamp Donnie's Venezuela deportation plans to El Salvador, not even to Venezuela. And we kick it over to Texas. Yeah, there were no victories today, and all I saw was another nail in the coffin of America and due process and the law and decency and goodness. One of the things that struck me is the sheer joy that Miss Bondi is taking in all this. She's one of the real evil ones. And today they brought up the press while she was doing her, 8 hours of TV, which she usually does per day. They asked her, hey, we looked into these guys' records and 75% of them don't have a record. And she got really mad and said, well, they're illegal and we sent them, blah, 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 yelling, all mad. And then the reporter said, so you're admitting they don't have criminal records? They didn't commit any crimes? You're admitting that? You know what Miss Bondi did? She turned around and walked away. Because she knows she got cornered with that question. And the reporter just disregarded the entire bullshit answer she gave and came right back with, immediately, so you're admitting they didn't commit any crimes? Miss Bondi couldn't handle that. Oh, they didn't accept my bullshit answer with authority? As if she's any way qualified for that position other than sycophancy. She's really the spokesman for this stuff. And I'm sorry to say again, all the words that come out of you people's mouths that are in the cult, all the words that come out of Miss Bondi's mouth, whole 8 paragraphs, answers that she gives to questions, all fucking worthless, all disingenuous. Again, nothing but a filibuster to cover the evil that you're spouting and doing, representing, glorifying, talking up. That's all it is. That's your existence. A disingenuous effort to cover the evil that is within you. Because I'm sorry, there's got to be something wrong with you if you're cool with this. Even the Supreme Court played Pontius Pilate and was like, well, we got to kick it to Texas because we don't want this evil on our heads. Even though we are evil, we gotta put a presentation before the public that we're almost decent. And I watch this theater play out every day with Miss Bondi doing greater and greater evil, promoting greater and greater evil, calling these people terrorists, calling these people whatever they need to call them to make the rubes nod their heads and say, okay. And I guess I never really put it into words, what all that actually is, what all, not all of you, so many of you actually are. Your entire existence, a disingenuous effort to cover the evil that is within you when you speak to other people about your views on the world. And you know, there's a lot of sayings that go around, like there's two sides to every story and every opinion is legitimate. No, Nazism is not a legitimate opinion, it's evil. Shipping people to death camps is not a legitimate opinion, it's evil. There's not two sides to every story. There's the truth and there's lies. That's it. All these bullshit sayings that people spout that aren't actually reality. In other words, son, there is good and there is evil. Those aren't opinions. Gassing people in the millions is evil. It's not an opinion. It's not a legitimate political stance. Son, do you get what I'm trying to say? That is why I say that so many of you that have your name on this, and people like Miss Bondi, and Donnie, and Leon, etc., all the words you say, so many words per day, thousands of them, written in text, on social media, spouted in front of cameras. When you're talking to your buddy at the water cooler, spouting your hideous political beliefs, in quotes. All the thousands of hours, all the thousands of words, naught but a disingenuous effort to cover the evil in you. A filibuster. A waste of fucking time. Everyone's time. Yours, the people that are listening to you, the audience watching you on camera. As you're spouting the virtues of sending people to death camps in El Salvador, a country they're not even from. And then when your lawyers admit that one guy at least should not have been sent, we fucked up. Now you're going to fight tooth and nail and glorify and promote leaving him there to rot. And judges will decide to go along with you, leaving him there to fucking rot, even though he's innocent. Even though you said he shouldn't be there. That's where we're at, son. I told you it's going to get really ugly and bad. And I know you still got your job right now. You only lost maybe a quarter of your 401k. We only got a little bit of death camp action going on. It's not that bad, right? You know why it's not that bad for you? Because you're not in the fucking death camp, son. That's why. When you're the one on the plane and in the cell with 70 other people and being treated like an animal for fun, you'll have a whole new perspective on where the fuck we're at in this dystopian nightmare. We waist deep in the motherfucker. And if you were on the plane to El Salvador, you'd be neck deep in the motherfucker. Once you're in the prison cell, the death camp, now you're over your head deep, meaning you die. Yeah, so again, we're waist deep into the dystopian nightmare. Even though you still have your job, again, even though you still have some of your retirement, even though it's not quite World War III yet. You think them stealth bombers are sitting in Diego Garcia for nothing, son? Oh, we gonna get there, don't worry. In other words, what I'm trying to say is we're already in a horrible place. And no, this isn't politics as usual. It's something much greater and more evil. We're already in the dystopian nightmare. It's not on the horizon. We're already in it. Our country's being dismantled and looted. We're sending people to death camps and we have no idea who's on those planes. And what's happened to them. And more groups are being added to that roundup list. Like people that criticize Israel, that happen to be Muslim in this country. And others. We've got basically a dictator that, does proclamations every day, just, ends things. And a dictator that's extorting the entire world via tariffs, running a protection racket, using our military, trying to, extort money out of Europe, Canada, etc. We've got an attorney general who stands up there and glorifies death camps and glorifies leaving an innocent man there to rot. I told you it was going to get real ugly. I told you where all this was going to go, and it sure seems right on schedule. In fact, the speed is rather astounding to me. It's going faster than even I thought, making me believe even more that we don't have as much time as some other people think. In other words, it took 2.5 months to crash our entire economy, make every ally hate us, and we're already talking out loud in the White House about an American president and an American military owning the Gaza fucking Strip and having a freedom zone there with U.S. military. When the fuck have you ever heard of this or seen something like this? The president speaks of Gaza as if it's a real estate deal, and he is going to own it. And again, the commercial with the gold Donnie statues. This ain't normal, son. This is something different. One more time, I want to say that. We are at the point where the United States president is saying, we're going to own Gaza, we're going to have a freedom zone, we're going to build the resort. He won't talk about the temple yet, but that's the real goal. And then you look at the commercial with gold Donnie statues. And I have to ask the question, why isn't every Muslim in the world protesting right now? Because any other president said that bullshit, man, with Netanyahu sitting next to him. You know what would happen. And I wouldn't blame them. Every Muslim across the world would be fucking flipping the fuck out, protesting. Just at the mention of it. And removing the Gazans on top of it? U.S. military presence? Resort commercials with Trump Gaza, gold Donnie statues. In other words, one more time, it's happening way faster than even I foresaw, than I expected. I didn't think at 2.5 months in, every ally would hate us, the economy would be crashed, and there would be open talk in front of reporters with Bibi Netanyahu sitting at the White House about the United States owning Gaza. Which really means Donnie's going to own Gaza. $1 trillion military budget, the most ever, too. Exactly what the Antichrist would do Isn't it? Of course it is. Did you think 2.5 months into this presidency, there would be talk of, straight from the president's mouth, of owning Gaza and having a military presence, U.S. military presence there, and building a resort? Did you think you'd see a 15-minute commercial for Trump Gaza with Bibi and Donnie laying on the pool deck in Gaza, with money raining from the sky on little Palestinian children? Did you think you'd see open talk of America owning Gaza? There's a reason I'm repeating it 7 times. Because that occurred to me today. I'm like, wow, we're at the part of the timeline 2.5 fucking months in where Donald Caesar Trump is outright stating out loud, without shame, without wincing, without flinching, that America will own Gaza, and that really means Donnie will own Gaza, and everyone knows it. And we will have U.S. military on that soil in a freedom zone and build a resort. And Donnie also said we don't even have to buy it, because a reporter framed a question like that. Oh, we don't even have to buy it. It's leveled. Again, Donnie looks at this as like a real estate deal. Oh, wow, I can just take Gaza. I don't have to buy it. It's an ash heap. Why would I buy it when I can just take it? I'm the Antichrist, for fuck's sake. Yeah, he was so appalled by that notion of buying Gaza. We don't need to buy it. It's a fucking ash heap. That's basically what he was saying. Just going to take it. Every one of you watching this, all 5 of you, now that YouTube's hit the button again, you know damn well every Muslim country would be rioting if any other president of the United States had dare say these fucking things that Donnie unabashedly, unashamed said in the White House, sitting next to Bibi Netanyahu, or that commercial. They would have just been rioting over that. Again, I wouldn't blame them. That's the notion. You're putting forth the notion of some other country taking their fucking land and displacing them. I bet you'd be real mad about that. So, again, I'm just astounded. In other words, it tells me there's something more going on here. There's a very powerful spiritual aspect. That's the only reason Muslims are not out in the millions protesting like a motherfucker after the president says we're gonna own OWN, he said, Gaza. We're gonna own it. You know, millions of Muslims, anybody else said that, American politician, president, they would be out in the millions protesting. Why is it not happening now? One more time. I'm even surprised at how fast this is playing out. Especially when there's open talk of owning Gaza and U.S. military presence. And again, we just all go about our day as if that's not the wildest shit ever said by a U.S. president. Owning it as if it's a real estate deal. I don't know what else to say until the next episode, which may be later tonight. I don't know. Have a good night.